Muy bien, pues buenos días a todos. En primer lugar, vamos a iniciar esta sesión. Pues agradecería que en la medida de lo posible apaguéis el vídeo y el audio. Luego, pues como requisitos técnicos, solo deciros que tenéis la posibilidad en la esquina superior derecha de habilitar la vista del hablante, que básicamente lo que os permitirá pues, es ver simplemente a los ponentes y no a todos los asistentes, con lo cual yo creo que será más cómodo, como digo, en la parte superior derecha de la aplicación. Por otro lado, deciros también que si hay cualquier pregunta, Natalia las responderá al final de la sesión, pero las podéis enviar directamente al chat y nosotros las iremos recopilando. A partir de ahora, como este webinar es en inglés, pues vamos a empezar hablando en inglés. First of all, just good morning to everybody. My name is Amadeo Gensana. I'm the director of the Economic and Business Department at Casa Asia. Today we are here actually to introduce this seminar about digital success in China. We have the cooperation of Novicel, who's a company established in Denmark, but actually present in all the world. They have offices here in Barcelona, and Novicel is a digital business agency aimed at helping basically companies, local and international, to perform their digital strategy. And as I said before, actually today we will be talking about digital success in China, and we have the cooperation of Natalia Wicik. She's SEO manager at Novicel. She's an expert basically also in helping companies in international markets by positioning actually the companies, especially in China. And what we have to say is that, China is quite a different market in terms of, the digital environment. We know that there are actually different search engines, like for instance, Baidu, with a different legal framework. Yeah, I think we have, as I said before, a different, so that we have to do some sort of, a very different actually digital strategy in order to be successful in China. To that extent, actually, as I said before, today we have here with us Natalia Wicik. Good morning, Natalia. Thank you very much for joining us today. And I will pass you the floor. And for the next actually 45-50 minutes, as I said before, we will have a presentation by Natalia on how actually the digital environment in China works. And after that, actually, we can have a session of Q&A. So, Natalia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So let me start with sharing my screen. Okay, so let me dive in straight away. So the title of the seminar today is Digital Success in China. And what I will try to do is today, in 30 minutes, I will try to explain the most complex internet landscape in the world, because China is exactly that. I will also try to see how it's changed. So I will try to identify a few trends that just happened because of the global pandemic. And also, I will try to give you some hints how to do the marketing in this market. So I wish me luck, because that's a lot of information. I'll try not to get too technical, but some things might be that, so you'll see. And as mentioned, please type your questions in the chat. So after I finish the whole thing, I can come back to the questions and try to clarify some things. Okay, so the agenda for today, first some introductions, a bit of introduction about me, a short one, and then some context. Then we will dive into the two marketing channels that I think are the most interesting. Also, since my background is SEO, that's the closest to my heart. And also we'll look at social media. Then we will try to see a few trends that I try to identify. And the last part is the practical approach. So practical tools, some resources for you so you can dive in and investigate more. Okay, starting with introductions straight away. So first of all, that's me, Natalia Wicik. I work for Novicel, and that's my contact details in case you want to connect after the seminar. And Novicel is this digital business company that kind of combines IT and marketing. So as I said, it will be a little bit technical, maybe not too much, but also I'll try to make the presentation quite data-driven because that's what we believe in. So I'll try to support some of my thesis with data. And let's dive in straight into some context about China. So first of all, quite interesting thing, which is the number of internet users with the fresh data up until March 2020, so quite recent. And you can see this continuous growth of the internet users. And you might also think that this is already coming to the almost maximum, right? Because 900 million users is a lot. But if you put that into a context of the population in China right now, this is the data from 14th of May, we have much more margin to still see this growth in the internet users. So now the internet penetration rate is only about 64%. So the provisions are that this growth we can see starting 2008 and multiplying 3 times more in March 2020 than in December 2008. I think it's clear that this growth has not finished and will continue. So obviously, we are speaking about the biggest internet market in the world by far. And one statistic I really like to share is the statistic that compares the language speakers of Chinese, language speakers of different languages, with Chinese being the first one. And when looking at the number of speakers compared to, on the right, actual number of content produced in this language, you can see huge disproportion. So China is right here, 2.2% of internet content is in Chinese, compared to by far being the most spoken language. And you can see how English, the blue one, dominates the internet sphere. So what I'm trying to show here is that trying to market in China and create content in Chinese is a huge opportunity that is still there for you to take. So competition in English-speaking markets is just not comparable to the China right now. So yeah, have that in mind when trying to market that this is still something you can quite easily win in. And the last thing, which is a bit more recent, so this is a comparison of device usage increase in percentage, and I've picked a few countries. So we have worldwide average increase in the use of the given device, and then we have a few countries that are interested in this concept of pandemic, right? So we can see how worldwide smartphone use growth is 70%. Then when you look in China, it's 86%, so by far higher than the average in the world. Laptop, a bit less, but still a big growth. So China, 45% growth in use of laptops, while worldwide on average is 40%. But you can see that Italy, Spain, interestingly, has got a bit higher growth than China in this case. And this is because China is really, truly mobile, so less traditional in the sense of the use of devices. Even smartwatch, the last row, you will see that the growth in China is 8% of using smartwatches. Average worldwide average worldwide 6, while Italy, Spain, US 4. So China became even more digital than it already was, and we know from the growth this is the biggest market. So just I thought some interesting facts for you to have a look at. Okay. Talking about China, obviously in the context of China, something that's really important. Big Chinese internet wall. So this basically refers to the limitations and censorship. So you might as well be aware that Facebook, Google, Instagram, and many other websites, as we know them, are not available in China. To be hosted in China, you have to apply for a special license, which is called ICP license, Internet Content Provider License. It's issued officially by Chinese Ministry of Industry and Information. It's very, very complex process. It's more legal than digital. So I'm not going to dive into that. But if you wanted to be with your website inside China, that's the big limitation. And if you're not hosted in China, which is the case for majority of websites, your website speed is a huge issue. So you either have to go for a very, very exhausting process to be inside, or you're outside and you deal with this technical limitation. So scripts, resources like Google Fonts or Google Analytics don't load correctly because Google is blocked. This means that everything is slowed down, and speed can be a real issue for the users trying to connect from China. So that's just a quick context, already jumping into more marketing hands-on topics. And let's start with SEO. SEO in China. So when we talk about SEO in China, it's very important to understand what search engines we are talking about. Don't know if many of you already work in SEO, but if yes, I'll try comparing Google to Baidu because that's the easiest reference. So Baidu, at the moment, this is the fresh data, this is April 2020, has got 65% share of the market of search engines in China. The second one is Sogu, the third is Haosu, and then we have Shenma. Shenma is mostly mobile, it doesn't really attract desktop audience. Baidu is this traditional search engine that dominated the market for the longest. And then the third, second place are changing through month, and year, depending on different activities. It also is very interesting that Baidu is this typical search engine. Once you think about it, it's been there for longest. But Sogu and Haosu try to be a bit more disruptive and appeal to a bit younger audience. So if you want to do SEO in China, first of all, Baidu is a must. But imagine 18% of all these internet users still being there is a huge market. So don't forget about other search engines. And how to do SEO in Baidu? Simple, right? If you already know something about SEO, you probably know all these terms. Analytics, content, backlinks, keywords, traffic, rankings. Sounds the same, right? Sounds almost like it's Google, because in a sense, it is similar. So let's just look how Baidu and Google compare, so we can see if we know any SEO tactics already, how we can kind of take advantage of them in Baidu. So to start with, Baidu, compared to Google, has got less resources to crawl and index. It's because simply Google is the giant. They have all the servers in the world dedicated to constantly finding and indexing new content. So Baidu is a bit slower than that. This means that the site speed is really important in this case, because if Baidu cannot go through your crawling, they will just simply not show you in the results, right? They will never get to understand your website. So have that in mind. And since that is a problem, a tool which can help with crawling and indexing is XML sitemap, and it's just even more important in case of Baidu, because they really need this guidance how to crawl and index your website. It's the same format as for Google, so your normal sitemap will work. Just make sure it's there. Now, technologically speaking, Baidu is a bit behind with some modern technologies. So if you build your website and you want to market to China, make sure it's not too modern, because it might be that Baidu is not reading the scripts correctly. And an example of that is JavaScript, which Google has announced quite a while ago already is well indexed and understood by Google crawlers, but Baidu is still not there. So make sure when you build the technology is adequate for China. SEO basics are the same. So in SEO, we work a lot with no index tag, for example. So that's the tag that tells Google, hey, don't index this. I don't want this to be shown in my search results. So the thing is, in Baidu, it doesn't work the same way. So some of the tags are just not read at all. So it's not a mistake if you use them. They're just ignored by Baidu. So no index tag is one example, but then no follow tag does work. So it's just very good to know how to navigate this landscape and have few directives for Baidu that you are sure work, so you can manage your online presence there. hreflang, again, a bit techy, a bit SEO, especially international SEO topic, because this is something that Google uses to understand the relationships between different countries and languages. It's very complex coding that is normally associated with how we do international SEO. In this case, it doesn't work, but I will tell you why. Baidu is built just for China and Chinese. On top of that, simplified Chinese only. So Baidu doesn't need to understand what are your languages, what are your countries. They just are interested in one that they understand. And to do that, you kind of have to confirm that the page that the crawler is crawling is in the correct language. So you should use the code which literally says lang ch Hans, so simplified Chinese, and you should use that in your head part of the website. So this is kind of confirming that the language is correct. Sorry if it's too technical, but hopefully if you pass this on to your developers, they should make sense from that. So yeah. Okay, a few golden rules for marketing and specifically SEO in China. Always hire natives, cultural context is a must. This might seem like something basic, repeated over and over, but many companies commit this mistake, especially as it comes to the cultural side of writing content. So instead of just translating, it's quite important to make sure it's also appealing to the audience you're trying to market to. Second one, that's a bit more hands-on. Use QR codes instead of URLs, especially on your printed material. But to be honest, anywhere you can, because Chinese audience is quite used to just taking the QR code reader and using that instead of writing down or remembering the URL of your website. And this has become even more important just now when we try to do things contactless. So probably the future of the business cards will be less exchanging, more reading the code of them. So have that in mind when you create any print material. This will just simplify the experience for your Chinese audience user and everywhere in the world. Make it visual. Photos, GIFs, live stream. Again, this is something that is not huge news, but in China is just more important than we know it here in Europe. So you want to be as appealing visually as you can. That's the type of content that Chinese audience responds better to. And the last golden rule, make it fresh. Content. Make sure you write fresh content and update your blog or news section. Because for Baidu, it's even more important than for Google. So there's a huge SEO correlation between how much content you update and how well you rank in general with your website. Okay. Last part of SEO that is quite hands-on again, quite techy, but this is a bit of a cheat sheet for you. So if you want to work on Baidu SEO, this is some golden rules that you should comply with. Metadata. First of all, in SEO, in any search engine, we work with the limited length of your meta title and meta description. So here for you is just the reference. How long should your meta title and description be for Baidu? Why is that 30 characters title and 78 description? Because we believe that calculating in simplification, one Chinese character occupies more or less 2 Latin characters. So you have to divide the lengths of Google and put them into Baidu, are more or less the same, but just make sure that the character occupies twice as much space. And then obviously using the keywords is important. It's important in every aspect of SEO in any search engine, but in Baidu, obviously what you need to do is do the proper keyword research in Baidu, which is the same tool as Google provides for Google users. And use always simplified Chinese. Baidu doesn't read the traditional writing, so make sure you don't make this mistake. And we've seen companies have a native Chinese speaker, but who happened to speak, to write in traditional, and the whole website was produced like that because there was no awareness that this will not work in Baidu. So Baidu will completely not index that at all. Okay, content. 2 short rules. Baidu is not great with detecting stolen content. So black hat SEO, which is the one forbidden by the search engine, is still quite common. So you'll see quite a lot of spam, but this is slowly changing. So I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying you should be aware that your competitors might be doing that at the moment. And hopefully Baidu will get better with time in detecting that. Google has done that years ago already, Baidu not yet, but I think it's getting there. And site speed is extremely important. Super important. I've already said that, but I will repeat that again. Okay, URLs, that's interesting. When you build your website, make sure you don't use the URL parameters because the crawlers of Baidu don't really understand that. So make sure you use simple URL structure with no question marks and parameters behind that. Second part, keywords in the URLs. So that's something in Google SEO many people believe is very important, not so important in Baidu. And I will tell you why, because it connects with the third point of this URL part. URLs should be in Pinyin or English. Pinyin, for those who don't know, is a Latin transcription of Chinese language. So in URL standard, generally how the web works, it's based on Latin characters. Any other alphabet has to be decoded in a way that is not very user-friendly. So that's why it's recommended to use the Latin version of the URLs and not the Chinese one. If you cannot do that for whatever reason, it's okay to use English URLs. And that's what Chinese users are pretty used to, because URLs have less importance, let's say. So just make sure it's all in Latin, no characters out of the basic decoding. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. And I said site speed is important, so I have some examples for you. This is a tool called Chinafy that compares the loading of a website between global and China itself. This actually is eDreams website. You might be familiar with them, it's a flight provider. So the problem here is that this is the Chinese version of the website, to be more precise. So there are some scripts in this website that are blocked, so it takes really long time for the browser and then therefore this test to detect those scripts and stop trying to load them. So even though the website looks like it's loaded by now, the last element still is not there. So your charging circle in the browser would still be working in China up until 48 seconds. And when we look at that, you can see that already the second, third second on the left is loaded, and it takes some 6-7 seconds on the right. This is a really long time for any mobile user. No one wants to wait that long. The research says that more than 3 seconds already makes the users frustrated. So, have that in mind that speed will affect directly your conversions. And now when we look at the same website, but within the actual examples, this is the comparison between California, Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. And when you look at that, you see how the final load took 47, and 44 seconds. But I want to put attention to something different. In California, the website size was 4.8 megabytes. You can see how in China, only a fraction of that loads. So in Beijing, 3.9, in Shanghai, 3.8, and here the last one, 4 megas. This is because of the scripts that have been blocked and couldn't get loaded. So there was no full experience for the user. You can see the number of resources here. 100 resources basically missing. So that's the typical issue. But this website doesn't have the worst performance. It's already somehow optimized for China, because as you could see in the visual comparison, it loaded to the functional level, right? Let's check another example. This is Hotel Palace Barcelona, so a 5-star hotel in the center of Barcelona. I took this because I just wanted to show a website that wasn't precisely optimized for China, so to see how it works. Sorry. I don't know why the GIF has previewed from before, so I'm going to just come back. Oh, anyway, the GIF just starts randomly, so I'll wait until it finishes and starts again, so I can show you the beginning, because this is the really interesting part. By the way, this Chinafy tool, I mentioned it later in the part of resources. You can use it for free and check for your own website. So that's a very good thing to do. Okay, we start from 0. So global on the left, look how fast, 3 seconds, and the image and everything is loaded. While on the right, because the image is very good quality, it takes really long to load. So look, 12, 13, 14 seconds for this to be fully functional in the first view. But it's still not 100% ready, because there are those scripts again which block the performance. So when we look at this, you will see that Beijing took only 12 seconds. But why? Because most of the parts of the website didn't load at all in Beijing. So actually, when I was trying to run the test for Beijing, it didn't work, because the important part of the website didn't get loaded at all. Shanghai, 39 seconds, and then that's where almost all scripts are loaded. So 3 megabytes from 3.1, right? So interesting to see, because as you can imagine, not many users would be sitting and waiting for 40 seconds to get the first use of the website at all. So definitely something that Hotel Palace Barcelona should work on. Okay, finished with the technical stuff. Now more a bit of a fresh approach. So social media, hopefully something more interesting. So to start with, I've prepared this little chart that kind of compares the platforms we know in the wider social media context to compare them with the Chinese counterparts, right? I'm not going to talk you through all of them because it's way too many, but basically that's the landscape. You can come back to the slides and check that. I will dive into two, the most interesting ones. So I'm going to start with WeChat because this is the most common social network outside of China, being from China. And just a few facts: monthly user base of 1 billion people. This is a very popular chat app, that is messaging chat app, but also way more. So it started as something similar to WhatsApp. And then over time, it evolved into everything else that we know it now. So this is a channel for brands, for customer service, for flight booking, for local services, for delivery, for massage appointment, payment app, everything in one. So it's really widened its landscape. And that's why in this graphic before, it kind of occupies on the right 5 of the different landscapes. So photo sharing, mobile, and it appears in other places too, right? And it's dominating China, but you can actually download it from anywhere and use it. So I invite you, so if you have a smartphone and you are interested in WeChat, that you download it yourself in the English version and you test how it works. So it opens your eyes to how the Chinese audience is communicating, because it is quite different. And just to mention that Sogo, so the second search engine, is actually integrated into WeChat. So they also have the proper search engine option inside. So very interesting how many elements WeChat is combining. And second one, maybe you recognize the logo. Recently in Europe and in the West, let's say, it became very common in the pandemic, in the lockdown. It's TikTok. Now, what I want to talk to you about is the fact that this is super popular platform now in the West, but really it launched in China before with a different name. So the actual name is Douyin, and this is an app that looks the same, has got the same design. Logo is fairly similar. The system is the same, but the Chinese and the Western versions are separate servers, separate landscapes, separate organisms almost. So if you wanted to join this movement of marketing in TikTok, make sure you create 2 profiles, one for the West and one for Chinese audience, because they don't overlap. And it's very interesting to know also that it's a great place for advertising for B2C brands, because it's very consumer oriented. And there's loads of advertising options connected to, hashtag promotion and stuff like that. So something that really clicks with the young audience. And I just linked here to a guide that we prepared from Novicel about TikTok advertising. Unfortunately, it's only in Spanish, so hopefully some of you can have a look. And yeah, very interesting movement. Gained its traction as a great young people social media now, but I think it's here to stay all over the world. Okay, so quickly diving into the trends that are now the topic of the pandemic. So the post-COVID 2020 trends. In all fairness, not much has been written about it yet, so I've been kind of sharing my own thoughts, what I've noticed to be the trends. Maybe you've also are familiar with some of them. The first thing, that's news from 2 days ago. China is launching its own digital currency. Now, this is not purely marketing, but it is interesting for those who sell in China, because if you already know about payment systems, you know it's quite advanced. So with the WeChat Pay system and Alipay, people are used to paying by their mobile contactless quickly for a long time now in China. This is kind of the next step that takes this advancement even further. So if you are selling in China, make sure in a few weeks you start investigating how this development is going and how you can integrate that to your payment system, your paywall. Definitely something that China will lead the world to. Second trend, that's a very interesting one. Live stream sales. Don't know if you've already heard about it, but basically, suddenly, because of the lockdown, this became the saving hand for the smaller retailers. So something very interesting as well. The live stream sales didn't exactly start now. They already happened in 2019, especially for big events like Singles Day, and they already had some results at the time. But what happened now is just merged to be much more common and reached smaller audiences than before. So you can see a few examples of the live stream sales. Local farmers selling on an online sales event some of the pineapples. So literally the cooperative that was producing them decided they have too much stock and they have to sell it. So they were in an online event presenting their product and selling them at the same time. Then you have florists, then you have local shops, but also big consumer brands were doing that as well. This didn't bring record sales yet, because obviously with the times of pandemic, the economy stops a bit everywhere, but this is something that's here to stay. And also interesting fact, if you want to learn about selling this way also in Europe, it's starting to slowly get traction here. So there are small platforms that are just now opening this option, so you can live stream and sell online in real time. And the third trend, which I think is much more advanced in a sense that we also see it here in the Western world. So self-service everything. So that starts with face mask vending machines that are quite common now in China. Hot meals vending machines. So not just the delivery of the hot meal, but actual machine that creates the food for you, and it's contactless. Takeout lockers, postal lockers that are no contact lockers, as you can see in the photo. And that's something that has just been around and has been developing as a trend, but now gain more traction. And that's here to stay for sure. I mean, this hygiene of changing the delivery methods and the speed is something that will stay long after the pandemic as a benefit for the customer. So if you are delivering anything, make sure you develop the options to participate in that system. Okay, we are almost finished. We have the last part, which is the practical tools and resources. So hopefully before I kind of inspired you to investigate more, because obviously this is all the topics are so wide. You need to dive more into detail to make them more actionable. But now I want to share a few things that can help you with this action. So practical tools. Testing site speed. Super important that your site speed is up to scratch, and you probably don't even know how this goes in China right now, because you being here don't have the same experience. So here are free tools for you. All of them are free that test the speed for you, show you some visual comparisons from different servers in different parts of China, also different parts in the world. So you can see the general performance. I invite you to do that. They are all free, so really good source of information. QR code generators. So as I mentioned, quite important to start this contactless movement with your contact details. So make sure if you market with China, you have some QR code prepared for you, and these are free as well. So go ahead, use it, add it in the footer of your website. That's something that users in China are quite used to. And people to follow, that's the interesting one, because obviously there are so many specialties within Chinese marketing. So I've kind of tried to pick up a few people I personally follow and I learn from about topics in China. So we have WeChat experts, we have paid search, we have site speed experts, retail expansion experts, and cultural digital news. I even know that a few people of these were invited to different webinars in Kasasia, so obviously good cooperations here. Make sure you follow them and learn the best you can. And that's it from me. Just wanted to add that contact me for a free China assessment. If you have a website that already tries to be in China, I will be happy to run a few tests and give you an overall image of how it is in China for you, using some of the tools I have. So this is my contact details. Make sure you connect on LinkedIn or through email. And now coming to questions, which I will just add that please do that through chat, not through the camera, because it's too many of us to speak one by one, right? So let's see what questions are there for me, if there are any. Oh, quite a few questions. I created an integration with Ctrip, and I had problems with hotels because I didn't configure the hotels which stayed in the Great China. Which is the Meridional China? Oof, I'm not sure I quite understand the question, but the thing with Ctrip integrations is a quite technical thing to do, quite difficult from the standpoint that you probably need some support from their side, because it's very development related. So it's less marketing. I'm not really working with Ctrip integrations, but my colleagues might do. So just have in mind that, that you might need a development help there. Okay. In order to improve our service performance, could it be useful to place our website in China, for example, using Alibaba Cloud, or this do not have an impact? Yeah, so actually hosting inside China gives you the advantage of being inside the firewall, not behind. So the speed when you host in China is way better. But if you want to host really inside, you need to apply for this ICP license. This is the blocker. So what really we suggest usually to do is either host in Hong Kong, which is way easier and cheaper than doing that in China, and you don't need the paperwork, but you are closer to China, so it is faster. Or use one of the more dynamic tools. For example, the tool I mentioned that tests speed is called Chinafy, and they actually create a sort of CDN for you, so content delivery network. So you are hosted outside, but there is a copy of your website also inside China, just to serve the images, videos, and the things that have the most weight. So definitely check out their website and you can see if that maybe works for you. What would be the best tool to measure website traffic in China instead of Google Analytics? That wouldn't work. Very good question. So actually Google Analytics is not working correctly. It recollects some data, but because the scripts are blocked, it's not reliable. And also for the speed reasons, sometimes it just doesn't load on time. So Google Analytics is not the best, but there are different free tools that are Google's competitors in this sense. And one of them is Yandex Metrica. So Yandex is another search engine from Russia that is not blocked in China, therefore using its analytics systems recollects all the data we need. And also the second one is Baidu itself. They've got their own analytics version. So it's not easy to install because you need to be verified in Baidu, which again is some paperwork. But once you are verified and you have your account open there, you get the best Baidu data there. Right. Question. The tests you run to compare the loading time of the web page are through direct website access or through Baidu search engine? Those gaps in loading speed are valid for both types of access. So these are actually live user tests done through a server in China by the tool. So they have nothing to do with Baidu. It's just the access how a user would see it in China. Now, knowing from the experience, normally the same limitations happen to Baidu crawlers as well. But since the crawler doesn't have to load the design, it just needs to recollect information, it will be slightly faster for Baidu search itself. But let's say the same scripts that are blocked will be blocked for both. So this is not exactly crawling, but it has got similar impact on crawling. And what about VPN and the way new generations are also entering social media, like Instagram, due to their interest in following Occidental trends or soccer team players, for example? Not all have TikTok or presence in WeChat, that's true. Should we have that in mind to create content there and that are also focused on Chinese users? Very good point. So there's a huge difference between the Chinese audience in China that has always been in China and a few that have traveled, lived abroad, studied abroad, and got to know about different platforms and have this urge to be in the Occidental trend. So imagine yourself being a user in China and have 0 friends who use Instagram. You've never heard of it because why would you? You don't Google things you cannot find in your search engine. So it's not something that exists in your landscape. But on the other hand, you have very good social media platforms that are easily accessible. Everyone you know is on them. So this is not very common for many, for big numbers, to participate in social media in the Occident, right? They have their own system that they're perfectly happy with. Then you would find a few Chinese users that have lived abroad and found out about Instagram and started to use it abroad. And they probably still use Instagram, but this is a very small percentage. So you should definitely try to market there, but that shouldn't be your main marketing strategy for social media because you will miss a huge amount of the audience. Also, it's probably the best to make your own research because it depends highly on a brand you're trying to promote. It might be a case that your brand specifically has got big Instagram following from China, but this is, let's say, quite a rare case. Okay, I don't know how we're going with time, but I think that will be the last question. What might be the important tips to take into account regarding live stream sales? Will it be feasible for foreign products like a winery? Yes, very good question. I think the important part of this is to find an adequate platform. So instead of using your own channel like Instagram and try to do that through live Instagram feed, pay a small subscription to a Chinese streaming tool so they do part of the marketing for you. And then they integrate the sales within the same app people are using to watch you. So you kind of save yourself a lot of admin work behind to make sure the sales work. Depending on your product exactly and how is your collaboration with China up until now. But I would say definitely worth seeing how you can simplify the process for you. And those live stream apps that I showed actually in the screenshots, they have reactions there. They have buy here option already integrated. So it's quite easy to use from the perspective of a seller. Okay, I hope I answered all the major questions. I had to skip a few because we're out of time, but please get in touch on LinkedIn. And if you have some specific questions, I'll be happy to have a look and hopefully answer all the questions you might have. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Natalia. I think it was quite an interesting presentation. And but I think at the same time, as you said before, there were just many questions left. So basically what we could do in the future would be, we will be actually sending to you a questionnaire right after this presentation. And I think it would be quite interesting if you could point out those aspects that you would like to learn about in the future so that we can actually just organize new webcasts to enter into more detail in some of the questions that we were not able to actually, to address due to the fact actually we didn't have time today. So please fill in the questionnaire. And as I said before, we will be just very glad to, explore the possibility of organizing new webcasts in the future. So thank you very much to all of you. First of all, thanks to Novicel and to you, Natalia, for the excellent presentation. And we'll see you in the next future. We will be just organizing more activities about the digital landscape in China, as I think it's really a topic of interest for our companies in things like marketing, like e-commerce, for instance. So your proposals will be just more than glad. Okay, so thanks to you and have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.